And I sat down at the dinner table and my parents said, "You've already agreed to it." And I said, "You're right." And so I went back the next day and I never stopped. And so I did it for 4 years. And I still didn't realize it at the time, but that's when I got hooked.
Welcome to Everybody Pulls the Tarp, the go-to podcast for high performers. I'm Andrew Moses, and each week I talk with Olympians, pro athletes, TV stars, Grammy winners, best-selling authors, CEOs, and other high performers to uncover their success secrets. Every conversation is jam-packed with inspiration and actionable ideas we all can apply to our own lives, personally and professionally. Get ready for a behind-the-scenes look at the techniques, processes, and mindsets powering the world's most successful people. Let's go. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Everybody Pulls the Tarp. This week, my guest is Ball State University Director of Athletics, Jeff Mitchell. Jeff leads a highly successful Ball State athletics department that includes 19 sports and more than 450 student athletes. He has helped guide Ball State to 8 regular season or tournament conference championships and has raised millions of dollars to support the university's athletic programs, facilities, and student athletes. Jeff has more than 20 years of experience working in higher education administration and is the co-author of the textbook Sports, Ethics, and Leadership, which he authored in 2017. Now, if you've been following collegiate sports over the past few years, you know that the entire landscape of college sports, especially in the U.S., has fundamentally changed for a variety of reasons. And we likely are going to continue to see even more change in the years ahead. It's one of the many reasons I was excited to sit down with Jeff to explore his career, leadership philosophies, and success secrets. Because he is navigating an incredibly complex and dynamic period of time in his industry. But this conversation, which we recorded back in December, is about so much more than college sports. It's about leading through change, balancing competing priorities, juggling different skill sets, and so much more. This is a really fascinating conversation, and it's filled with so many powerful ideas we all can apply to our own lives. I hope you take away as much from this one as I have. Oh, and one more thing. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended to be a substitute for the advice of a physician, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional. So, let's pull the tarp and get straight to Jeff Mitchell. Where I want to begin, I want to kind of just dive right in. This may take us a lot of different directions just from the onset here, but other than NIL and the transfer portal, I'm curious, like from your vantage point, what is the biggest difference in like the business of college athletics today versus when you got into the business years ago?
Gosh, that's a way to start a podcast right there. I think the biggest difference is we are facing a challenge around how to handle success. Okay. And what I mean by that is we are faced with really an unprecedented shift in our enterprise where when things good happen, there is a distribution of talent or whether it's at the player level, the coach level, the administrator level, and you just see a lot of movement that way. And so we enjoy success and then it disappears and it spreads out. And then you have to rebuild and try to replicate it. Whereas in years past, you have success and you continue to stack on it and you learn how to handle it. Well, now we don't handle it well. Or if we have disappointment, you've got the same thing. You've got a distribution of talent that's leaving, and then you have to collect and redo again. And it's just a real challenge. So, and it's easier when you fail to try to say, well, we got to rebuild. But I think we're having a real shift in trying to handle when we have success and hold on to what we're doing and continue to stack and build and see a bigger picture. And I think it's a shame, quite frankly, because I think we all got into this enterprise to develop programs, to develop humans, and to enjoy the benefit of that work together. And that's probably lost a little bit in the last few years.
It's certainly a paradigm shift that I hadn't necessarily thought about, that typically, historically, success more often breeds stability and growth upon that stability. And in the ecosystem that you all live in, success and failure breed instability. But it's interesting how the success can breed even more instability that you have to respond to.
That's right. And it's a challenge for leadership to harness the success that you have and utilize it in a way that it breeds more success, or that it doesn't manufacture into the instability as you describe it. And so there's a great tension there. And I don't know that I have the answer to it, but it's something that I'm conscientious about in terms of building our teams here at Ball State and hiring coaches, whether it's a football coach that we've done recently, or whether it's a coach that has been here for a long time. Our men's tennis coach has been here for 50 plus years. And at some point, there'll be a transition there. There's just layers of factors that go into trying to put your program as a whole and then a program as a specific sport to create greatness or excellence in however you describe it. And it varies from place to place. And so that's the fun of it, though, Andrew, is that, that there's never a dull moment in the exercise of trying to figure out what's in the best interest of your particular institution, your particular department, your particular sport. And so that's the fun of it.
It certainly is fun. And we're certainly in uncharted territory in terms of college athletics. I don't know if this will actually happen. I'm just reading the rumor mills like everybody else, but recording this on a day when there are reports that UNC may hire Bill Belichick to be their next football coach, which is certainly something that I don't think anybody had on their bingo card at the start of 2024, which just proves that you have no idea where this is all headed. But one thing that is certain is that you have made a massive positive impact at Ball State in just a short period of time. You're leading a highly successful Ball State athletics department that sponsors 19 programs with more than 450 student athletes. And one of the things, Jeff, that I am always curious about, I've talked to a lot of coaches and a lot of athletes, both at the college and professional levels, but this is the first conversation, to my recollection, that I'm having with a director of athletics. And when I think about your role, it's not too different probably than any other leader or leadership role of a complex institution, organization. But when I think about what you have to do, the word that comes to mind is just the phrase that comes to mind is competing priorities. You must have so many competing priorities in terms of the different programs, the different coaches, the fundraising, marketing, sponsor. There are so many different components that I don't think the average college sports fan has an appreciation for. And that's kind of where I want to go next. I want to try and explore that a little bit, because I think that's an idea, or that's a concept that a lot of leaders or new leaders or experienced leaders wrestle with, the idea of competing priorities. So how do you go about taking something that's complex and all intertwined and simplifying it to really understand what your priorities as a leader are?
Yeah, it's a little like doing your laundry. You don't just put it all in the washing machine at once, right? You've got to collect similar items and put it in and do it together so that it stays fresh and clean and the colors are still aligned in the same way. So it is a complex, moving science experiment, really. There's all these moving parts to our organization, and you're factoring in people. And that's the beauty of it. That's why I love doing what I do, is because you get to interact with people and listen to them and hear what's important to them, which helps shape the priorities for our department. And at the same time, we're but one department, an institution of many departments, and we're all trying to pull on the same rope so that we can support the best interests of Ball State University. So when you have those priorities aligned, that, hey, what we do supports a bigger cause, it makes the priorities within our individual department a little bit easier, at least the way I view it. And we're looking at sports that generate revenue. We're looking at sports that have been historically successful. We're looking at units that are not necessarily sport related that impact how we compete And so we're trying to ramp up our championship performance area. And that takes a priority, even though it's something that perhaps has not been talked about much here over the last several decades. We're making it a priority now. That ruffles some feathers because we're spending some more money on that area. We're building buildings in that space. We're hiring people in that space. And the fact of the matter is, though, at the end of the day, we all have to interact with each other. So it's incumbent upon me and our leadership team to make sure that the lines of communication are open, that we understand why we're doing the things that we're doing, why some things are urgent, why some things take a little bit longer. It doesn't mean that they're less important. They're just not as urgent in a particular time. Like I've got a position that I need to hire on my senior staff, and it is an important position, but it hasn't been urgent because of the way in which we've managed to cover responsibilities that fall in this job description, because we've had more urgent things at play, such as making sure that our seasons in the fall can conclude successfully, whatever that means. And I think the more you do this, the more communication you have within the leadership in your program, the more people hear and see and feel what is important to the leadership group, the more we listen to our coaches to see what's important to them. We can find some cohesion in how we work, but the puzzle is never solved. It's just constant. So there's an evolution to it. And I mentioned a science experiment earlier. There's an art to it as well. So just to muddy the waters a little bit, mixing some analogies, you just have to be able to play in this space and make adjustments, and a quick aside, that's one of the biggest lessons I think I learned from playing college baseball was the repeated overtures of my college baseball coach saying, "Hey, Mitchell, make an adjustment." And over the years, it finally sunk in and certainly has served me well. And a piece of advice to how I lead is you just have to constantly make adjustments.
That is so interesting, Jeff. The idea of making adjustments certainly applicable in baseball and sport and business and life in general. What about the how? Like, how have you learned to make effective adjustments? How have you, and I would think that part of making an adjustment or learning to make adjustments is figuring out how not to over adjust, how not to adjust too quickly, how to turn the dial the right way. Like, how have you learned to do that?
I think that I have learned by allowing patience to be a skill and being a thoughtful, comprehensive leader, or having a thoughtful, comprehensive approach to leadership, better said that way, and allowing that patience to help me filter the information that comes to me. I just get so much information that comes to my desk, even though that we have a process where I've got leadership teams that are handling a lot of things, but they're giving me information as well. And sometimes things get past them and get to my desk. And if I get sped up, then I make decisions that are not thoughtful. And so I try to skillfully allow information to come in. I can put it on, however my brain works to digest it and understand where things fall within the broader scheme of our department, and then make thoughtful decisions based around thoughtful communication. And so I really challenge myself almost on a daily basis to have patience as kind of a guidepost, and then practice it every day. Because if I'm not patient, then I don't thoughtfully understand what somebody's trying to tell me. I can't listen to a coach and hear from him or her what's really important to their program, and then try to figure out how that fits into the broader impact that we're trying to have as a department, right? And so I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've practiced for a long time, is to be a patient leader. And sometimes I know my staff, like, "Hey, you got to take some action on this." And I said, "Well, I am. I'm very much taking action right now on it." And they don't necessarily see it, but they're beginning to understand that in this thoughtful, mannered approach and this calm approach, you can actually accomplish a lot because you don't put yourself in a disadvantage by making a hasty decision that can ultimately backfire. So there's a little chess being played in some of this too, but you get all these different perspectives that you're trying to weigh. And if you get ahead of yourself, you can trap yourself into a situation from which you can't recover. And so I try not to put myself in those traps, and I challenge my staff to help me avoid falling into those traps as well. And so it's really a collective approach. And I think it's helping within our department of how we communicate and how we lead, because there's always a bigger picture. It's got to be bigger than football. It's got to be bigger than just the athletics department. There's a broader university that is a tremendous place and serves a huge purpose within our community, within our state, within our region, and we have to protect it at all costs.
That's so well said, Jeff, because I do feel like the way, whether it's technology or just society in general, I think we've created this sense that, I know I feel it at times. The email comes in, you have to respond to it right away, or there's an issue and it needs a resolution immediately. And it's almost as if that we as society have begun to like define productivity as like how fast you react to something or how fast you decide on something, and when you do that, as you described, you kind of shortchange the level of synthesis and analysis and meaningful thought that you can put into a decision. Or maybe the decision is to not even make a decision, right? Maybe it's something that rears itself as a priority, but it's not urgent, as you described early on in our conversation, based upon the research and analysis that you do. I think that's really interesting. You mentioned your staff kind of sometimes trying to like, hey, Jeff, we got to take some action here. Can you recall a time, and you don't have to give the specific example of what it was, but can you recall a time when you began to almost feel a little bit sense of impatience with yourself? And, hey, Jeff, you really got to get there on this. Or like, does that happen? And do you have to balance that with that kind of patience is a virtue principle?
Yeah, I think it naturally happens when you have a competitive mindset where it's, hey, we need to make this play, this decision right now. And if you don't, you're going to be behind. So it happens all the time. But what I try to balance is that there's a box, that urgent and important box. And if something falls into that category, then you have to take action immediately. But there's these other boxes. This is part of you can do some research on. It's called the Eisenhower matrix. And it's how he made some decisions when he was serving as president. I think even when he was serving our country in the military. But he would have this box, urgent and important, or important but not urgent, and then urgent but not important, and then not urgent and not important. And he would just put things in those boxes, and that would help him in the decisions that he made. I find that fascinating. I don't have that box or those boxes anywhere in my office, but mentally I kind of put them in those categories. So I do get trapped sometimes when I put things in a box where it shouldn't be. So put it in the important but non-urgent box, but I treat it as if it is urgent. And so I have to just be very vigilant and diligent about the decisions that I'm making so that I can be consistent. Because that's part of that developing patience as a skill mantra is you have to be consistent with the decisions that you make. And you can't make a decision on Monday that looks in a certain way and then later in the week make a similar decision, but have it not feel and be appreciated the same way as Monday's decision. So there's got to be a consistent approach to it.
All right, everyone. We'll get back to the conversation momentarily. But first, I want to tell you about my free weekly email newsletter, Tarp Pullers. Each week, I share an uplifting and inspirational tarp pulling story that is sure to brighten your day. And I also highlight some of the most powerful ideas I've learned on my journey talking to 200 and counting of the world's top performers. The newsletter is short, concise, and a reader recently told me this. She said it makes her day every time it hits her inbox. Go to everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter to sign up today. How do you balance, I might be asking you like the biggest challenge of college athletics in general, but like, how do you balance the fact that there's multiple purposes, right? There's obviously an incredible pressure to be successful on the field, but then there's also all the purpose that you described that Ball State University has. And the fact that at the end of the day, despite NIL and all this stuff, these are student athletes with the emphasis on student. And I mean, you certainly are all leading the way. Last year, I believe all 19 programs had a cumulative GPA of 3.0 or better. I mean, that's remarkable. And I'm curious, like, how do you balance that? I mean, it's got to be obviously rooted in principles, but how do you execute on that? Again, I keep coming back to that balance and the competing priorities.
Yeah, it's a real challenge, and it's more challenging now than it has been. I think that Ball State is rooted in the enduring values of beneficence, which are the guiding values for our institution. So in short order, it's the value of doing good in the world and for others. And when it comes to athletics, yes, we want to be competitive and win championships. But we also understand that in order to do that, we have to make sure that our student athletes are thriving academically, that we are playing by the spirit of the rules, that we're compliant with NCAA regulations, however nebulous they may be these days. That we have to be good stewards of the resources that are entrusted to us in terms of fiscal responsibility. And if we do those things well and we keep the student athlete kind of at the center of that, then we have a chance to win championships. So if you with this podcast, Andrew, and pulling the tarp, if we were to take that tarp off the field and we're looking at a baseball field, and the student athlete represents the pitcher's mound. So every decision we make is in the best interest of the student athlete. First base is about academic success. Second base is about commitment to institutional integrity and following the rules. Third base is about a commitment to physical integrity, physical responsibility. If we do those things well, then we have a chance to touch home plate, which is winning championships. So that's kind of my schematic that I like to talk about. If those priorities are situated the way I've described, and we put the student athlete at the center of that diamond, then we got a real chance to make a big impact on the lives of those student athletes and to provide a quality experience at Ball State that serves them well 40 years after they've graduated. The challenge, though, is that we don't enjoy necessarily the 4 years of a student athlete's presence on our campus now with the transfer portal. And that's not a Ball State issue so much as it is just an issue of our enterprise right now. So our obligation has shifted to where we provide a quality Ball State experience, whether a student athlete enjoys one semester on our campus and one season, or whether it's 4 years, or in some cases even more with graduate school. And we just don't waver from that commitment to our student athletes. And so I think that's part of the reason why we enjoy some of the success that we do, is because we are deliberate in our outreach and appeal to the student athlete population, recognizing, though, that we are competing in a very dynamic landscape, and that, yes, championships and high level success really do matter. And it causes some tension. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just forces us to re-examine who we are and how we live on a daily basis.
Jeff, I feel like every question I ask you is about something that like has become increasingly complex and increasingly challenging in your role. And I feel like I just keep saying, well, this must be the most challenging. But okay, so now I want to talk about coaching searches. You just completed a coaching search for a new football coach. In college sports, I mean, football and basketball, coaching searches tend to get the most publicity, but every coaching search is important, ensuring that you have the right leadership in the different programs, the 19 programs that you all have at Ball State. This is something that everybody, a coaching search and a decision like this, when to fire, when to hire, all these things. These are things that it feels like everybody on social media thinks they have an opinion of and thinks they can do better than the people in charge. But I want to ask you all about it, because I think this is something that everybody follows, everybody monitors, but it's not something that like the general public really understands. So just take me through the process of hiring a new football coach. Like, what are some of the components and pieces and things that are going into that people may not necessarily have a full appreciation for?
Yeah, what a great question. And of course, we're just coming off of hiring Mike Uremovich as our head football coach here at Ball State. And the process for me was relatively simple. And that was, I wanted to conduct a thoughtful, comprehensive search. Now, pressing me on defining what that means is I did not want to be rushed in the process. I wanted to have meaningful conversations with candidates, either that were interested in the job or that we were interested in as candidates. I wanted to create a runway where I felt comfortable having video conferences with them, phone conversations with them, perhaps meeting them in person. And I didn't want to set a time limit on how fast I needed to do this hire. Football in particular is really sped up. So that's a natural tension that was impacting my ability to do this the way I wanted to. But we made a leadership change with a couple of weeks remaining in our season, which allowed me that extended runway to conduct a search the way I wanted to so that we could end in a very positive, exciting place, which was accomplished. You start broadly. You allow that interest to flow naturally to the organization. We did utilize a search firm. We utilized the Collegiate Sports Associates led by Drew Turner, and they're really helpful in collecting these interested candidates and collecting information for me to go into a database to review credentials and help connect dots. Athletics is a big game of connect the dots in many respects, and seeing who you know that other people have worked with, and just to help frame a picture of who we're looking at as a candidate. So we started with about a pool of just over 50 qualified candidates. You've got a handful of individuals that like football but never coached, but they think they've got the answer, and those get weeded out pretty quickly. And then you go to these qualified, talented individuals, and you cull that list down to about 12 to 15, and then you cull it down to about 5, and then you cull it down to maybe 2 or 3 finalists, and then you make a decision. And by that time, when you get down to the last few, you feel really good about a decision that you're going to make. But there's a lot that goes into it. I look through 3 different windows. I look for competence. So somebody that has a deep understanding, and we're using football as an example here, a deep understanding of the game and everything that goes into it. It's not just X's and O's. It's how to plan a practice, how to recruit, how to schedule, how to assemble a staff, and how to break down film. I mean, just everything that goes into the game. I needed somebody with a deep background in. The second window is connectedness, how well they recruit, how well they assemble that staff, how well they can communicate on campus in the community. Do they have instant respect when they walk in the locker room or the team room? How well do they connect with the people that they're in charge of? And how well do they connect with our administrative staff who are tasked with helping them be as successful as they can be? And then the third window is competitiveness. I want somebody that wants to beat me in horse, right? Or ping pong. Now, I'm going to try to beat them, but I need them to try to want to beat me. And that comes, all those things are clearly demonstrated in interviews if you ask the right questions and if you provide the forum for them to ask the questions to us about, hey, what's it like at Ball State? So I was very pleased with our process. It was thoughtful. It was comprehensive. I included members of my staff as I got deeper into the process because I value their perspective and I wanted to hear the different thoughts that they have, the different backgrounds from which they come, and they have immense talent in various areas that all support our coaches. And particularly, this is a big hire, a big sport for our campus. And at the end of the day, we landed with a candidate that checks all those boxes, through those windows, and was a sitting head coach and knows what to do. And so I have great peace now, a week into this tenure as we record this, where our head football coach is running our program, and I'm very comfortable with that. And so there's really not a lot of intrigue behind these search processes. It's just you're dealing with people. It's just a high profile job, and you can't overcomplicate it. It's got to be pretty simple. But at the same time, it does need to be thoughtful. It does need to be thorough, because I think at the end of the day, you can filter out concerns and you land in a place that everybody can be proud of and that it's easy to cheer for. And that's certainly what we want to do in terms of what we want to trot out on a game day next fall is a program that everybody can be proud of and it's easy to cheer for.
Again, I can't help but think about the idea of patience, and a lot of that principled patience that you talked about, was outlined in that process, and the way you analyze the three windows. I mean, it's so consistent through everything that we've discussed today. I want to talk about you personally a little bit, Jeff. I mean, you mentioned playing college baseball, then eventually went to law school at University of Mississippi School of Law, where you served as graduate assistant in the external relations department, working with Ole Miss football and men's basketball. First off, I got to imagine you did a lot of tarp pulling when you worked as graduate assistant there at Ole Miss. But did you always know that you wanted to do something in higher education? You wanted to do something in athletics administration? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I didn't know it at the time, but I'll take you back a little further. I was the manager for our high school football team in a tiny town in southwest Mississippi called Magnolia, Mississippi. South Pike High School was invited to be the manager for the football team. And I was playing baseball, I was playing tennis, soccer, some other sports, not a football player. And I kind of reluctantly agreed because I wasn't sure what it all entailed. And to be fair, after the first day, I remember walking home going, I'm not doing this. That was a lot of hard work. And it was just different for me. I was stepping out of my comfort zone. And I sat down at the dinner table and my parents said, you've already agreed to it. And I said, you're right. And so I went back the next day and I never stopped. And so I did it for 4 years. And I still didn't realize it at the time, but that's when I got hooked of wanting to be a part of a bigger organization that was focused on the development of others. And I went to college, had that opportunity to play college baseball, work in the department, and really was getting the bug then. And then as my first job running media relations at Millsaps College and going to MBA school was when I really got the bug and thought I could see myself one day working as a leader in higher education and athletics administration. Decided to go to law school because I just had the idea that the future leaders in our enterprise were going to be those with a business background and or a law background, and I want to be qualified to do both. And so I've been really fortunate in that regard that I was able to stack those credentials with a lot of hard work and a lot of experience. I believe you can accelerate experience, and I've been fortunate to have this breadth of experience, which have prepared me to be in the position I'm in today, and to have one day have a president look at me and say, yeah, you're qualified to do this job and I want to hire you. So I'm grateful for the opportunity that's been presented to me at Ball State. But I think it was during law school where I really clearly saw a path for me. And again, it was based on some previous experience and some hopes and dreams about what was to come. And so again, I'm very fortunate to have had the career that I've had and to have met the people that I've met along the way, because I do believe that it's the obligation of leaders is to develop other leaders around them. And I've been in the presence of some tremendous leaders, and I try every day to extend that gift to the people around me.
You're doing a fantastic job of it, Jeff. I'm curious, other than the obvious, like you've got some contract negotiations and different things, but you're farming that out to practicing attorneys today, I'm sure. And the experience of going through law school, what would you say, like what skill do you use most today that you learned in law school?
Yeah, great question. I think a few of them. I do think that, not to harp on patience again, but I had to learn some patience in law school just because you can't speed through the reading that you have to do. You can't speed through trying to stack the information that's coming your way on a daily basis, because it's the level of detail and that helps you understand what the law is about. And as it extends to the professional career, just because there are a lot of moving parts, but you've got to be able to have that level of patience to understand that level of detail to make it all the puzzle pieces fit. I think the ability to listen and the ability to synthesize information are skills that I learned in law school. There's just a lot of information coming at you, and you've got to be able to absorb it. And then you've got to be able to process it and make sense of it. And so as a leader, I think that's very relevant to what I do on a daily basis. Being able to understand the impact of the words that you use, whether in written form or in verbal form. So whether it was going through mock trial and arguing a case, or being able to present a brief that was to be persuasive to help a client, whatever the case may be, those things matter. And it's the same case today. In my compliance background, when I was serving as our head compliance officer at Santa Clara University on the West Coast, I was advocating for our student athletes in waivers that I was submitting to the NCAA, or advocating for our coaches as a sports supervisor. So those are skills that you learn in law school that have served me well, and certainly continue to serve me well today, because I just do it at a more prominent position, or in a more prominent position, and are certainly doing it more publicly, and representing not only our department, our coaches, and our student athletes, but the university as well.
It is no wonder that Ball State University Athletics is in great hands. Jeff, this has just been a fantastic conversation. I've learned so much, and I can speak for everybody associated with Ball State Athletics when I say that everybody is so glad that your parents pushed you to go back that day to be the football team's manager when you didn't want to. And it led you on this path that has been so wonderful. In many ways, you're just getting started, which is really cool to think about as well. There's so much information. There's so many ideas. There's so many lessons in leadership in life that you've stacked, to use your words, throughout your career so far, but there's still so much opportunity ahead to continue to make an impact, both on individuals, teams, and a university at large, and communities, and so many others. You are a certified TARP puller. There is no question. Jeff Mitchell, thank you for spending a little bit of time with me this week, and we'll have to do this again soon.
I look forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me this week. Be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you can catch all of our upcoming episodes. And if you are like me and want a world full of TARP pullers, then leave a review to help others find us. You can also follow me on Instagram at AndrewMoses123, and sign up for my email newsletter at everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter. I'll share tips and insights to help you achieve maximum success and happiness. Until next time, keep pulling the tarp.